I checked my phone again. 7:46 p.m. Still no reply. I had already reread our last message thread 3 times. His last text. Can't wait to see you Saturday night. 8 p.m. sharp. Where something read. And there I was, sitting alone at a table for two, in the dim corner booth of a rustic little Italian restaurant in downtown Portland, wearing a red dress I bought just for tonight. My hair curled perfectly, lipstick freshly applied, nerves buzzing in my stomach. He picked this place. He picked this time. And now, silence. The waiter came over again, polite but slightly awkward. Still waiting, ma'am? I forced a smile. Yeah. Just a little late, I think. He nodded and left, but I could feel it, the look people give someone who's obviously been stood up. I hated how warm my cheeks felt. I hated how I tried to keep glancing at the door as if Ryan might come in late, all apologetic, holding flowers, saying, traffic was a nightmare. But it wasn't traffic. Because I'd seen his Instagram story just an hour ago, drinks clinking with his friends, the camera panning across a table full of laughter, a girl with glossy black hair sitting beside him. The caption, nothing like squad nights. That story was posted at 7:08 p.m. The exact moment I was fixing my mascara and triple-checking directions to the restaurant. My phone buzzed. My heart leapt, but it was just an Uber Eats promotion. I blinked hard, pressing my lips together, refusing to let tears fall. I wouldn't cry in a public restaurant. I checked my messages again. Still no reply. Still the little green delivered bubble taunting me with its silence. I typed a message, then deleted it. Typed again, then erased it again. What would I even say? Hey, did you forget? Are you okay? Why are you doing this? The truth was I already knew. I was being ghosted. Live. In real time. And what hurt more than anything was this wasn't just anyone. This wasn't some random guy I'd matched with on Hinge last week. This was Ryan Matthews. Someone I had known for almost 4 years. Someone I had quietly, stupidly loved for 2. We started as co-workers. He was the sous chef at the Copper Nest, the very restaurant I was now sitting in. I used to work part-time here during my last year in grad school. I'd host, waitress, take reservations, anything to keep the student loans from burying me alive. And Ryan? He was funny, confident, charming in that casually chaotic kitchen guy way. Always a little flirty, never quite crossing the line. Always making sure I got staff meals, offering me rides when shifts ended late. I thought we had something real. And when I left to take a corporate job, he stayed. I'm not the office type, he always said, but we kept talking. For months. Slow burn. Flirty banter. Phone calls that lasted too long. The occasional, we should finally go out, that never quite landed. Until last week. He asked me out. Picked the restaurant. Picked the day. Told me he couldn't wait. And then ghosted me. I sat there for another 20 minutes. Sipped water. Forced a smile. Watched couples around me clink wine glasses and share appetizers. Finally, I flagged the waiter. I'm sorry, I said softly. I'll go ahead and close out. He's not coming. He gave me a sympathetic nod. That happens more than you'd think. As I gathered my coat, he added, you can still order something to go if you're hungry. Chef made lasagna special tonight. No, thanks, I said. I think I've lost my appetite. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. I didn't have a jacket thick enough for the night. Just a thin shawl and a heart that felt like it was slowly crumpling into pieces. I got into my car and sat for a moment, keys in the ignition not moving. I checked his profile again. He'd posted another story. This time, a close-up of creme brulee, captioned, dessert hits different when the company's right. And that glossy-haired girl? She was feeding him with her spoon. That was it. No accident. No confusion. No, my phone died. He had made plans with me and gone out with someone else, laughing, posting, being absolutely sure that I would see it. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I turned my phone off. They say ghosting hurts most when you saw a future with someone. But what really shattered me that night wasn't just Ryan. It was everything he represented. Every time I'd ever believed that if I just stayed kind, loyal, and patient enough, someone would finally choose me. But no one ever had. Not my father. Not my mother. And definitely not Ryan Matthews. I remember being 9 years old, sitting in the back seat of my dad's car, holding a handmade card I drew for his birthday. I had colored the whole thing with little balloons and stars and a stick figure that was supposed to be me and him, holding hands. He looked at it, smiled briefly, then said, "That's sweet, Em. Now don't forget to be nice when your brother gives a speech, okay?" Because my brother, Cameron, always had a speech. At every event, every dinner, every family reunion, Cameron was the golden child. The varsity athlete, the straight-A student, the one my parents would rearrange vacations for just to watch his regional track meets. I wasn't jealous of him, not really. I was just invisible next to him. Even when I graduated college with honors, I got a "that's great, honey. Cameron just started a new firm, did we tell you?" Even when I helped my mom pay off part of her medical bills while juggling 3 jobs in grad school, she said, "You should talk to your brother. He always has advice about money stuff." I learned early that my love had to be quiet, that I'd be loved less loudly. That kindness didn't get you center stage, but it kept you useful. And sometimes being useful felt close enough to being loved. I think that's why Ryan appealed to me so much. He saw me, or at least I thought he did. When I worked at the Copper Nest, he was the first person who learned I was vegan and started setting aside vegetable risotto before the kitchen boys drowned it in butter. He noticed when I got a new haircut, teased me when I wore glitter sneakers, let me vent about my professors without trying to fix anything. "You're always looking out for everyone," he told me once. "Who looks out for you?" It was the first time I couldn't answer. Maybe that's why I held on to his attention like it meant something more. Maybe that's why I brushed off the red flags. Like when he'd go radio silent for days. Or when he'd cancel plans last minute with casual excuses like, "Kitchen slammed, you know the drill." Or when I came back to the restaurant a year after leaving just to say hi, and he introduced me to a new hostess as, "Oh yeah, that's Emily. She used to work here." Just used to. No mention of how many nights I stayed late to help him label containers, or how I once stitched up a cut on his finger with my own first aid kit for my car. Still, I kept holding on. Because that's what I'd always done. I held on to friendships that only called when they needed rides. I held on to jobs that underpaid me just because the team was like family. And I held on to a version of love that always required me to shrink, to be easygoing, low maintenance, supportive, accommodating. The kind of woman who doesn't make waves, who doesn't demand too much, who's always grateful to be chosen. But I was tired. And that night, sitting alone in my car in a red dress I bought just for him, I felt something inside me crack open. Not in a loud, vengeful way, but in a quiet, terrifying way. Like when you realize you've been living in a house with a leaky ceiling, and for the first time, you notice the rot spreading across the beams. I went home that night and didn't cry. I didn't text him. I didn't block him. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just sat in silence, made tea, took off my makeup, hung up the dress and folded it neatly back into the plastic wrap it came in, tags still attached. And I thought, how did I get here? How did I become the woman who waits quietly to be chosen? The woman who gives everything and always ends up with nothing? I looked around my little apartment, the one I paid for entirely on my own, decorated with thrifted furniture and string lights, books stacked beside plants I'd kept alive for years. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to ask. What if I stopped shrinking? 2 days passed. No message. No apology. No explanation. Just total silence. I kept thinking maybe he'd call. Maybe he'd pretend something happened. A car crash, a phone issue, a misunderstanding. Something. But Ryan Matthews didn't even bother with a lie. The world just kept spinning like nothing happened, except everything inside me had changed. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not even Ava, my best friend. I just kept it quiet. Embarrassed. Ashamed. I mean, how do you explain to someone that the guy you liked for years, the one you finally thought saw you, ghosted you in the most public, humiliating way possible? But then something else happened. I walked into Grounded, the coffee shop I go to every Friday morning before work. It's a cozy place. Old brick walls, lots of mismatched chairs, a community bookshelf. Ava was already there, sipping a cappuccino and scrolling on her phone. "Girl," she said, not even looking up. "Why didn't you tell me about Ryan?" My heart stopped. "Tell you what?" She tilted her screen toward me. "Tell me this didn't ruin your whole week." I leaned in and saw it, a tagged Instagram post from Layla Monroe, one of the newer hostesses at the Copper Nest. She'd posted a picture of her and Ryan at the same table I had waited at, only this was the next night. Same booth. Same dim lighting. His arm around her shoulder. The caption, "When the chef cooks and flirts." I tried to smile, but I could feel my jaw tightening. Ava blinked. "Wait, he asked you out first, right? You were supposed to go out with him Friday?" I nodded. "I did. He never showed." Her eyes widened. "What the hell? Are you serious? He stood you up and took her out the next night?" I swallowed hard. "Looks like it." She was silent for a moment. Then, "That's evil." I wanted to agree, but somehow, deep inside, I still wanted to blame myself. "Maybe I read too much into it," I said. "Maybe it wasn't even a real date." Ava slammed her coffee down. "No. No, Emily. Don't do that. Don't minimize it. He invited you, told you to dress up, gave you a time and place. That's a date. He stood you up and replaced you like it meant nothing." I didn't answer. I just stared at the photo. I don't know what was worse, that he ghosted me, or that no one seemed surprised. Not the restaurant staff. Not the mutual friends we had. When I bumped into Miles, one of the line cooks from the restaurant, at the grocery store later that week, he didn't even ask how I was. He just said, "Hey, sorry you and Ryan didn't work out. That guy's got commitment issues. Don't take it personally." Don't take it personally. It's always those words, isn't it? As if being discarded and humiliated is some neutral transaction. As if not answering a text or standing someone up is just part of the game. But what no one seemed to get was, it wasn't just a date. It was me. It was my trust. My vulnerability. My dignity. And it was being played with. And suddenly, I wasn't quiet anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't confront. I didn't send a dramatic message. But something shifted. I stopped making excuses, not just for Ryan, but for everyone. I stopped defending the people who disappointed me. I stopped blaming myself for other people's lack of care. And I started watching. I watched who stayed quiet. I watched who brushed it off with, "He's just like that." I watched who made excuses for him. "He's stressed, he's busy, he's complicated." And I realized something that made my stomach twist. People are more loyal to your silence than they are to your pain. Because my silence made things easier. More comfortable. Less awkward. If I didn't speak up, no one had to pick sides. No one had to confront their friend. No one had to acknowledge that I was disrespected. So, I became invisible again. But not in the way I used to be. This time, I let them. When you stop explaining yourself, people get uncomfortable. When you stop performing for their approval, they notice. And when you finally decide to stop chasing, not out of anger but out of clarity, the world shifts. That's what happened to me. I didn't make a scene. I didn't message Ryan. I didn't subtweet him or vent online. I didn't try to win or prove my worth. I just stopped showing up. Stopped texting the group chat. Stopped answering weekend invites that always ended in disappointment. Stopped being the one who remembered birthdays and sent thoughtful notes. I disappeared without a dramatic exit, just a quiet closing of the door behind me. And it was the most peaceful decision I'd ever made. I started by removing reminders, unfollowing Ryan on Instagram, blocking his number, deleting photos, returning the red dress, dropping the name The Copper Nest from my vocabulary. I cleared space, not just on my phone but in my mind. And into that space, I poured myself. I reactivated a project I'd shelved 2 years ago, a food blog idea that mixed plant-based recipes with behind-the-scenes restaurant culture. I called it Plated and Personal. It started slow, just one post a week. I wrote about flavor, technique, and kitchen culture. But beneath the recipe lines were stories. Stories of being overlooked. Stories of standing beside men who took credit for ideas that weren't theirs. Stories of being told to smile more in the service industry. And people began to notice. At first, it was just friends and a few vegan bloggers. Then local foodies. Then a podcaster reached out. Then a women's entrepreneur group in Portland invited me to speak at their brunch meetup. I almost said no. I wasn't used to being heard. But something in me whispered, show up.
So I did.
I wore a simple blouse, jeans, no makeup.
Just me.
And when I spoke, my voice didn't shake. I didn't talk about Ryan. I didn't need to. I talked about how it feels to be the one who always gives, and what happens when you finally stop. How silence can be grief, but it can also be rebirth. How not texting back isn't pettiness, it's a boundary. How not explaining is its own power. Soon after, I was approached by a woman named Monica Bell, a local investor and restaurant consultant who had been following my blog. We met for coffee. She was sharp, elegant, and exactly the kind of woman who could spot both talent and trauma from a mile away. I read what you wrote about your last kitchen job, she said. You have an eye for food, but also for people. Thank you, I replied, surprised. You ever think of opening your own place? I blinked. You mean like a restaurant? She smiled.
No.
I mean like a home. With food. Atmosphere.
Story.
Your story. And for the first time in my life, I let myself say it aloud. I have. I always thought I wasn't ready.
She leaned in.
You're more than ready. The next few weeks felt surreal. Meetings. Discussions. Sketching out a vision. Looking at spaces. I knew I didn't want anything fancy. Not some upscale fusion palace. I wanted warmth. Intimacy. A place for people like me, the quiet ones, the givers, the overlooked. And then Monica said it. There's a space that just opened up. Used to be a pasta restaurant. My stomach turned. She opened her iPad and pulled up a listing. It was the Copper Nest. Ryan's restaurant. I froze. Wait, they're selling? Bankruptcy, she said. Chef left. Staff turnover. Owners desperate. It felt like the universe had paused, waiting for my response. But I didn't gloat. I didn't grin. I didn't say, good. I just said, let's talk numbers. I never told anyone. Not Ava. Not my family. Not even Monica knew the full story. I didn't buy the Copper Nest to get revenge. I bought it to build something sacred in the ruins of what broke me. We gutted the place. Repainted. Rebranded. It wasn't a restaurant anymore. It became Sunday's Child. Named after the old poem my grandmother once whispered to me. Sunday's Child is fair and wise, and full of grace and light. That's who I wanted to be. Not someone who is used, forgotten, ghosted, but someone who built beauty from ashes. When we finally opened our doors, soft launch only, I didn't expect much. But the word spread fast. People remembered me from the blog, from the talk, from whispers and community circles. And one by one, they came, not just for the food, but for the energy, for the kindness, for the way the servers knew your name, for the notes on the napkins that read, "You matter," for the way we never rushed anyone out the door. It was quiet magic. And no one knew, not even the staff, that this place had once belonged to a man who stood me up like I was nothing. Because he no longer mattered. Because I had become something more. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when she walked in. I remember it clearly, because the storm outside had turned the windows misty, and the whole place smelled like rosemary focaccia and roasted garlic. We weren't busy. Just a couple regulars tucked into the back corner, typing on laptops or flipping through dog-eared books. I was behind the counter reviewing an inventory sheet when the bell above the door jingled. She stepped in, tall, older, maybe late 60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a graceful twist. She wore a raincoat over a plum-colored scarf and had a cane, though she carried herself like someone who never let it slow her down. "Are you the owner?" she asked, her voice warm but direct. I straightened. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" She smiled. "You already did." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" She gestured toward a small envelope in her hand. I've been meaning to come for a while now. I wasn't sure you'd remember. She sat at the nearest table and slowly unfolded the note inside. I was in the hospital 2 years ago. Broken hip. Alone. No family nearby. I was scared, angry, and hungry. I watched her closely. Something about her voice that was familiar, but I couldn't place it. A nurse came in with a paper bag from some tiny pop-up food truck nearby. Said it was donated. Said the chef sent it personally. She looked up. It was you, wasn't it? I felt my chest tighten. I nodded slowly. I remember. You asked for no mushrooms. She smiled. And you wrote on the bag, rest easy. You're not alone. I've kept that bag ever since. I swallowed hard, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. You don't know what that meant to me, she said, her voice quivering now. Not just the food, the message.
The care.
That someone saw me. I sat across from her, stunned. I've followed your journey since then. The blog. The name change. The opening of this place. I knew one day I'd come say thank you. She reached out and gently pressed the note into my hand. You didn't just feed me. You made me feel human again. I couldn't speak. I just held the paper like it was a piece of treasure. And as she stood to leave, she turned once more and said something I'll never forget. Anyone who couldn't see your worth was blind. But I'm glad they were, because now the world gets to see you shine on your own terms. That night, I cried in the back office. Not because I was sad, not because I was still angry, but because for the first time, I felt seen. Not for what I could give, not for being the reliable daughter or the one who always helped without asking for anything, but for the heart I had, for the quiet love I gave without needing applause. The next morning, I opened my inbox and saw a message from a local podcast called The Rooted Table, a platform that interviewed chefs and food creatives across the Pacific Northwest. The subject line, "We'd love to feature Sunday's Child and your story." And just like that, the world was beginning to see me, not as someone broken, but as someone whole. It started with a text from my cousin Melissa. Melissa, hey I saw that thing about you in the Rooted Table.
Wow.
Looks like you're doing really well. So proud of you, Red Heart. No punctuation. No mention of the years of silence. No reference to how she laughed behind my back when Ryan ghosted me or how she called it just karma. Just a breezy emoji and a vague compliment. I stared at it for a while, then locked my phone. Didn't reply. A few days later, it was Aunt Cheryl. Then my sister Rachel. Then, of all people, my mother. Emails. Messages. A voicemail. Each one different, but all with the same undertone. Let's talk. Let's reset. We've all made mistakes. But none of them said, I'm sorry. None of them said, we were wrong. None of them said, we didn't see you, and we should have. One voicemail from Rachel said, Mom's really upset about how distant things have gotten. She didn't mean to hurt you. None of us did. You know how things get misunderstood. We'd love to come by the restaurant sometime. Maybe talk things through? I could hear the click of her nails on the steering wheel as she recorded it. It sounded rehearsed, like something she practiced before hitting record. There was no warmth, no ownership, just an image to protect. And then came the kicker. Oh, and can you take down the blog post about the food truck incident? Some people are assuming it was about Ryan. It's causing a bit of drama. Just saying. There it was. Not concern for me. Concern for themselves. The same people who told me I was dramatic when Ryan vanished. The same ones who laughed when I cried on the porch at Thanksgiving. The same ones who called me too sensitive when I stopped showing up to family barbecues. Now that people were seeing me, now that the world had begun to respect me, suddenly, they were interested. But not in me. In managing the narrative. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood what silence could do. Silence made them uncomfortable. Silence made them guess. Silence made them realize they no longer had access to me. And that was a kind of power I never knew I had. A few weeks later, I was at Sunday's Child doing the evening prep when Ava walked in holding her phone, eyebrows raised. Emily, she said. You're trending. My heart jumped. What? She turned the screen around. An influencer who dined at our place posted a reel. In it, she shared snippets of our food, the napkin notes, and her caption read, "The woman behind this restaurant was once ghosted, humiliated, and erased. But she didn't just survive, she transformed. If you're in Portland, this is more than food. It's healing on a plate." Within an hour, the video had over 100K views. And with it came comments. Comments from people who knew. People who had seen me be ignored, forgotten, dismissed. And now they were seeing me as something more. I knew my mother had seen it too, because that night she sent me an email with a subject line. "Can we please just talk?"
No.
Not anymore. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't owe anyone a breakdown of my healing. They were trying to catch up, not because they missed me, but because they missed the version of me who was always available. But that version was gone. The woman who once asked, "Why don't they choose me?" was now asking, "Why did I ever let them?" It was a Sunday evening, one of those rare nights where I closed the restaurant early, lit the little candles near the bar, and let the soft hum of Nina Simone fill the empty space. I was wiping down the front counter when Ava called out from the back. "Hey, something came for you." She walked out holding a sleek, navy blue envelope sealed with wax. No return address. Just my name written in elegant gold ink across the front. Emily Carter. I felt something stir in my chest as I carefully cracked the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The paper was thick, the kind that feels like it matters. And the handwriting was delicate, precise. "Dear Emily, you may not remember me, but I will never forget you. My name is Evelyn. I'm the granddaughter of the woman you fed in the hospital 2 years ago. She passed away last month. In her final weeks, she often spoke about a young woman who brought her food when no one else did.
She said you looked her in the eye.
She said you told her, 'You're not alone.' And she believed you. She asked me to find you, to tell you that you changed how she left this world. She said you made her feel like her life still mattered, that she wasn't invisible. And for me, I want to thank you for giving my grandmother dignity when I couldn't be there. You didn't know us. You didn't have to show up. But you did. People like you don't just change lives. You redeem them. With love. Evelyn Grace Thomas." I clutched the letter to my chest and sat down behind the counter, trembling. For a moment, the years of feeling small, overlooked, and disposable melted away. It was like the universe had drawn a full circle. All the quiet kindness I had poured into the world had found its way back to me. That night, I lit a candle for Evelyn's grandmother. Not out of sadness, but in honor. She was proof that even the smallest acts of compassion leave echoes. And I realized something I hadn't let myself feel until that very moment. I mattered. Not because I'd bought a restaurant. Not because I was trending on social media. Not even because I had proven anyone wrong. I mattered because I had loved, even when it wasn't returned. A few days later, I wrote Evelyn back. I told her that I remembered her grandmother's face. How she'd smiled when she opened the food bag. How she'd teared up reading my note. I told her that she had given me a gift, because her grandmother reminded me why I do what I do. Why I love people, even when it goes unnoticed. And for the first time, I wrote something I had never said out loud before. I used to think being invisible meant I wasn't enough. But maybe it just meant I was saving my light for the ones who needed it most. Later that week, one of the napkin notes we placed under our customers' plates went viral. Someone had taken a photo of theirs.
It read,
"You are not forgotten. You are not replaceable. You are not too much. You're a miracle, just as you are."
It was my handwriting.
And within 48 hours, that napkin was shared across Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, even printed in a local paper. Strangers were tagging the restaurant, quoting the words. People who'd never met me were saying, "This. I needed this." And that was the moment I knew. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need an apology from the people who never saw me. I didn't need validation from Ryan or Rachel or my mother. I had created my own mirror. And finally, I could see the reflection for what it truly was. A woman who never stopped loving, even when it hurt. And in doing so, she had built a life where she was loved back. The knock on the restaurant's front door came after closing. It was a soft tap, almost hesitant. I had just finished tallying up the receipts, the chairs were stacked, and Ava had already gone home. I was alone, save for the quiet hum of the fridge and the cinnamon-sweet smell of our last dessert batch. I glanced at the clock. 9:07 p.m. I walked to the door slowly, uncertain. And when I looked through the glass, my breath caught. It was my mother, standing there, her coat wrapped tightly around her, holding a small Tupperware container. For a moment I just stared. She looked older than I remembered. Smaller, somehow. Her lipstick was smudged, her eyes tired. But I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel that aching need for her to see me, not anymore. I opened the door halfway. "Hi, Emily," she said quietly. "Can I come in?" There was a long pause. The kind of silence that feels like a decision forming inside your bones. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said gently. Her lips parted, as if she was surprised by how calm I sounded. I brought you those lemon bars you liked. I thought maybe we could." "I appreciate the gesture," I said. "But I'm not in a place to reopen things that hurt." She blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. She wasn't used to this version of me. "I miss you," she said, voice cracking. "I don't want us to be strangers." I nodded softly. "I understand. But I've worked really hard to stop hurting myself in order to make other people comfortable." A pause. "I'm not angry," I added. "I just don't want to go back." Her hand tightened around the container. "But can't we talk? Just once." I looked her in the eyes. The same eyes I had begged to notice me for years. "I've said everything I needed to," I replied. And then, softly, I added, "No. Just that. One word. A complete sentence. No need to scream. No need to explain. No need to bleed for it." Her eyes welled with tears. But for the first time, that didn't break me. I wasn't trying to fix her pain. I wasn't responsible for it. She nodded slowly, turned, and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, the red taillights disappearing into the dark. And instead of that old emptiness I used to feel, I felt stillness. Peace. Like the final door had gently clicked shut, not slammed, not broken, just closed. Later that night, I sat in the restaurant's back booth, the letter from Evelyn still tucked into my notebook, and I wrote something on a napkin. Not for anyone else, just for me. Closure doesn't come from getting answers. It comes from knowing you don't need them anymore. I folded the napkin in half and slid it into my coat pocket, not as a memory, but as a marker of everything I had survived and everything I had let go. If you had told me a year ago that I would own a restaurant, the very place where I was once ghosted and humiliated, I would have laughed. Not out of disbelief, but because the version of me back then didn't believe she was allowed to want more. More peace. More respect. More love. Real, steady, nourishing love. She was still busy shrinking to be acceptable. Still apologizing for being too emotional, too much, too invested. Still blaming herself every time someone walked away without explanation. That version of me thought if she just did everything right, if she was nice enough, soft enough, quiet enough, people would stay. But they didn't. And the truth is, they weren't supposed to. Sometimes, when the wrong people exit your life, it's not a rejection. It's a rescue. And sometimes, your biggest heartbreak becomes your biggest breakthrough. Ryan leaving didn't destroy me. It freed me. Because in the silence he left behind, I finally heard my own voice. And in building something of my own, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove myself right, I realized I didn't need them to come back and say, "You were always enough." I needed me to say it. And now I can. To anyone watching this, to anyone who's ever stared at a phone that didn't ring, waited on a love that never showed up, felt invisible in rooms they built for others, I see you. And you don't have to earn your worth by being quiet, agreeable, or small. You are not a placeholder. You are not someone's maybe. You are not a footnote in someone else's story. You are the main character of your life. And the people who can't see that, they were never your people. You don't need a dramatic confrontation. You don't need revenge. You just need to rise so quietly, they don't even realize you're gone until you're out of reach. And when they come knocking again, you'll answer with peace in your heart. And just say, no, not because you hate them, but because you've finally chosen yourself. So here's my final message to you. If no one has ever said this before, let me be the first. You are not too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are not asking for too much. You are just asking the wrong people. Now, go build a life so beautiful that silence feels like music. Let them wonder. Let them regret. Let them sit in the space you used to fill.
And you?
You keep glowing. Because the ones who ghosted you, they didn't leave you behind. They just made space for everything better to find you.